Okay, it's 5:03, so I think we're gonna get started now, if everybody's ready. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Noah Lee. I'm a 10th grader from the Cambridge School in San Diego, and I'm going to be your host today for this webinar. This event is organized by We Impact, and We Impact is a 501c3 nonprofit that was founded 6 years ago by Kyle and Emily Tianchi. It empowers students through educational events, club activities, and civic engagement to make positive impacts on the community. This webinar is designed to provide valuable insights and inspiration for high school students and their parents, and our goal is to help students cultivate a good balance between academic success, social impact, enjoying extracurricular activities, and maintaining mental health. Now, I'm going to be interviewing a group of very outstanding senior high school graduates for the first 50 minutes, and then we can have a little Q&A session at the end. And we're going to be recording this webinar, so if you have privacy concerns, feel free to block your video or hide your name. And for the Q&A, you can just be inputting questions into the chat throughout the webinar, and we'll take note of them. And at the very end, we'll kind of just collect them all and ask the most important or the most asked questions. All right. With that, we're going to start with an introduction for each of the seniors we're going to be interviewing today. So the first is Tyler Shao. Tyler is a qualifier of the Gold Division in the USA Computing Olympiad, the second highest division in America's most prestigious pre-collegiate informatics competition. Tyler is also a 4 times qualifier for the American Invitational Mathematics Competition, or better known as AMY, and he is the head coach for his middle school's Math Counts Club and a varsity athlete for badminton and cross country. And as you can see from his sweatshirt, he's going to be attending UCLA in the fall. Our next person we're going to be interviewing today is Ariel Fader. Ariel will be attending the University of Pennsylvania in the fall. She is a Coolidge senator, and she was the top-ranked Lincoln Douglas debater in the state of Kentucky, winning the state competition. She is also the national treasurer of the Technology Student Association, and she is a Senate youth delegate. Yeah. The third person we're going to be interviewing today is Shruti Petty. Shruti is a Koch scholar and a presidential scholar. She won the Harvard Tournament for Forensics in Extemporaneous Speech, which is one of the most, and Harvard is one of the most competitive debate and speech tournaments in the nation every year. She runs a nonprofit called Civication, whose goal is to bridge civic education gaps in America, and she's an advocate with the American Civil Liberties Union. And she will be attending Brown in the fall. And last but not least, we have Kyle Tianchi. Kyle is the founder of We Impact. He is a Koch and presidential scholar and a Coolidge senator. He is quite an accomplished debater in his own right, as he has accumulated 3 gold bids to the National Tournament of Champions in public forum debate. And he is also a young arts winner who enjoys piano and creative writing in his free time. And he will be attending Stanford in the fall. Yeah, so those are the 4 seniors that we're going to be interviewing today. Very accomplished and very high achieving people. So the first set of questions are kind of going to center around high school's academic life. So I guess this is to all of you. Could you just tell us a little bit about your high school, whether, for example, it's private or public, maybe how competitive it is and what the culture is like?
Um, I can go first. My name is Tyler. I attend Del Norte High School, high school in San Diego, California. I think it's a pretty competitive high school. We have a really competitive culture. A lot of people sign up to take a lot of AP courses, a lot of clubs and extracurriculars, such as robotics is a pretty competitive club. There's a lot of people in debate too. A lot of people sign up for so many activities. And yeah, that is my school. What about you, Kyle?
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Kyle. I go to the Cambridge School, which, as many of you might know, is a small classical Christian school in San Diego, California. Um, Cambridge is a very unique school. As I said, it's classical, and so we learn things like Latin, rhetoric, logic. We have speech and debate mandatory in class, which I know some people are very afraid of, but it's a really unique education that's not so much focused on cramming information into you as it is like making you into a good discussion person and an interesting person to talk to. Cambridge really isn't that competitive. They try to de-emphasize the college application process, which I'd say is a pretty good thing. But at the same time, because at least for me, the workload in school is pretty light, there are opportunities to do things outside of school, like I did debate, research, and several other things. So it's a great school. I love it. And definitely pretty unique compared to most people's high school experiences.
I'd say that my high school is probably the complete opposite of Kyle's. I go to Ryle High School in Kentucky. It's just your very typical American public school, about 500 kids. And I'd say that it was somewhat competitive. Like there was definitely a group of students who were definitely always in the AP classes. So um, yeah, I'd say we had like a group that was quite competitive within it, but other students were focused more on things like athletics. I'd say in terms of extracurriculars, we didn't have as many compared to some other schools. So I had to like look elsewhere for opportunities and like started creating some of my own.
Hi, I'm Shruti. I go to Basis Scottsdale, which is a public charter school. You guys might know of it. It's a pretty big chain, and I would say ours is kind of like a mix between Tyler's and Ariel's. We're a pretty small graduating class. We have like 74 students, but there was a lot of emphasis on academic competition and taking a lot of AP, so class rigor. Every single student in our graduating class has taken at least 12 APs just based on the curriculum, and I think because there is so much academic like rigor, the class itself can become a little competitive. But we also all have known each other since middle school, since Basis is a 5 through 12 school. So the kids are there actually pretty supportive, and I think that really helps. I guess another unique aspect of our school that I kind of find a little bit challenging is we are very STEM focused, and whether it was through the activities I did or like my future career plans, I'm more interested in things like politics and government stuff like that. So I kind of had to find my own niche, just like Ariel. I had to look a lot outside of school for opportunities or create my own clubs, like the speech and debate team I had to start at my school, things like that. So basically, it was like a mix between different systems.
Yeah, so I think obviously you guys, there's like a pretty wide diversity of kind of schools represented here. Like Kyle goes to a very small classical Christian school, and you have big public schools like Tyler's. I guess my next question would be kind of at your school, which of the classes interested you the most? And also, and I know Shruti kind of started to answer this, but what extracurriculars were you involved in? And if there weren't many offered at your school, like, what did it look like for you guys to kind of branch out of your school environment to go find things to do?
Yeah, I can answer this question first. I think Cambridge has a lot of interesting classes. Two standouts for me. The first is literature, which I think everyone started to love after a certain point. And part of it was because there wasn't a lot of workload. We weren't doing an AP course like AP Lit. It was kind of like curated by our lit teachers, and we just spent our time working through like famous novels, having discussions about them and using different lenses to analyze the novels. And that was pretty awesome, especially because my school tries really hard to make the argument that literature is like humanity's bread, like we can't live without it, which I think is a pretty true statement. And so I ended up really loving literature. And to answer the second part of the question, I also did a lot of creative writing in high school, like flash fiction and poetry, and I did competitions like Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, and that was definitely partially inspired by our pretty great lit classes at Cambridge. And then the second class, I guess, is our 12th grade's ethics and aesthetics class, which I'm pretty sure they just put those two together because they rhyme. But it's a really interesting class. It makes me realize how unethical I am all the time, but we discussed the different ethical frameworks like deontology, consequentialism, virtue ethics. So pretty fantastic, just important class for my life, I guess, because it talks about like how I should conduct myself when I'm faced with these ethical dilemmas. Um, and then let's see. And so then moving on to really answering the second part of the question, as I mentioned before, I did creative writing in high school. Another big extracurricular was research. I did an environmental research project about detecting microplastics in drinking water. I also was involved in several leadership initiatives, including this one, We Impact, and an environmental advocacy one called Clearwater Innovation. I was also the captain of my speech and debate team. I did public forum for all of my years in high school. And I also played piano and listened to Taylor Swift on the side.
Now, I guess I could go next. So I guess two stand-up classes kind of mirror Kyle's. I'll start with one is for us after we finish our AP classes in junior year, we have something called capstone, which is supposed to mirror some more like the seminar classes you'll find in college. And for me, especially this year, it was capstone film and literature. And like I've mentioned before, our class is very inclined towards STEM. So we have a lot of aspiring doctors, engineers, computer scientists. But I really like this class because not only did we able to experience some of like the greatest films ever. I'm a huge film nerd, so that was like really good for me, and some great books as well. But I also thought it was so cool to see people who had such different interests in different fields come together and appreciate something. So I think maybe that's a lesson, even if you think you're more of a STEM or humanities kid, it's always good to go explore what the other field offers. And another great class that I really liked in my freshman year was actually AP Government, and it was the first AP I ever took. For me, I think it just at that time during COVID, it became like almost natural for me. And I think I really found a love for political science and advocacy, inspired me to, grow our speech and debate team at school. I became captain, and that was one of the big extracurriculars I was involved in high school. And I guess moving on to the extracurricular part of the question, a lot of the stuff I did kind of stemmed from like advocacy or helping other people. So I had like a nonprofit that was dedicated towards voting rights, and I worked with the American Civil Liberties Union, which is a pretty big nonprofit here in America that kind of works to, protect people's human rights, whether it's through immigration, criminal justice reform, education, things like that. At school, apart from speech and debate, I also, like Kyle, I played piano for quite a while. So I was involved in like our music honor society, and I did a lot of outreach with charter schools since I go to one as well. And I guess another thing is I also do research, like Kyle too. So this was kind of separate from my school because our school doesn't have a really big program for doing like science fair or things like that. So I ended up completing my research independently, but it was basically an artificial intelligence algorithm to predict floods in Southeast Asia, which for me was something very personal to my history. And I think it was also what motivated me to do a lot of my extracurriculars. I didn't really do things that were like popular or trendy. I kind of just did things that I was interested in or my own interests. So I didn't really like stick to one theme or one niche. I kind of popped around a lot.
Got it. And so my school, Del Norte High School, as I said, is a large public high school. I'd say a lot of the people, inspired by their parents, what their parents tell them, are very STEM focused. And it's kind of the very polar opposite of Kyle. Whereas everyone in your school, Kyle, values and learns a lot of literature. Unfortunately, at Del Norte, a lot of people dislike literature, and like we couldn't wait to graduate to get out of that class. Like, I'm sorry, man. But that aside, some personal classes that I enjoyed were AP Physics C Mechanics and actually AP Psychology. Physics was awesome because since I'm a STEM and math kind of student, I could really see how these physical forces that could really connect to us, such as gravity, torque, motion. In addition, psychology gave me so many insights on so many different topics since it's such a broad topic. Some stuff that I really liked learning about was like composition of the brain. Also, we learned stuff such as the unconscious defense mechanisms and many other things that we'd probably not get in a traditional class. Del Norte High School also has a lot of really fun elective offerings. Aside from the traditional band, orchestra, and music programs, I believe there's also classes like art, AP Studio Art, And one of my favorites that I took in freshman year, 3D animation. In 3D animation, we used a software called Blender to create these 3D renders of scenes, such as like a donut and a cup of coffee. We also learned how to animate them, and we kind of recreated scenes from like Despicable Me, where Gru freezes the people in front of them to get into the front of the coffee line, and that was awesome. Now, in terms of extracurriculars, I was involved in I spent a lot of time in high school involved in sports. I participated in cross country, track, and also badminton. Cross country and track, they were like daily commitments from Monday to Friday, 2 hours a day from like 4 to 6 p.m. Right after school, I'd have to go and change, get into my running clothes, go and run, do my warm ups, also core workouts for like 2 hours, then get back home all tired. And it was the same for track, and also there was a preseason for each one of them. So I want to say that sports are also like a big commitment to do, and that's what I kind of spent a lot of time on in high school.
Yeah, for me, I'd say some of the classes that interested me were probably I enjoyed AP European History. That was kind of like a break from our normal classes since we really got to dive into the arts with, sort of a political background towards it, learning about history that normally wouldn't have gotten to know. I think I also enjoyed our programming classes. We had a computer science track, which I followed, and that was pretty rewarding. I enjoyed having like a smaller class size since not many people at my school were as interested in it. In terms of extracurriculars, I've been involved with speech and debate for like since middle school. I was captain. That took up quite a bit of my time. I also spent a lot of time with various like technology nonprofits. So as mentioned earlier, I'm also the national treasurer for Tech Student Association. And I, did a couple like just like multicultural club at my school as well. And I'd say a lot of my time is also taken up with my software engineering internship. I got one at a Fortune 100 company, and a lot of my summers were taken up because I'd be like traveling back and forth for some political immersion programs. So I did quite a few things that were both involved with civics and politics, and then also with computer science.
It's really cool. I guess my next question was going to be about leadership and community outreach, but I think you guys probably answered most of that with your activities and extracurriculars. This is just a reminder to everybody in the meeting, but we're going to have a short Q&A session at the end. So if you guys want to put any questions you have throughout the meeting, I think someone already did, into the chat, then we'll be sure to ask a lot of those questions at the end of the meeting. With that, we're going to move on to some questions about college applications. I guess my first question is sort of as you kind of approached the college admissions process, did you have a dream school in mind? And what kind of factors did you decide or consider when you were deciding which school to apply early decision to?
I can. Oh.
Oh, no, you go.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start us off then. So I did not have a dream school. Neither of my parents attended college in the US. I am also the oldest of my family, so this was a very new experience for all of us. And I just didn't have my mind set on a single one, so I didn't think that early decision was a right choice for me. I did apply early action to public schools though, so University of Michigan, Purdue, like my state school as well. I did all of those early, and I heard back earlier from that. But yeah, I think that going into the college admissions process, I was pretty open-minded just because I didn't understand it as well. And I kind of like just took my chances on regular decision, honestly.
Yeah, I was gonna go first because my answer is very bad. I guess I did have a dream school, which was Stanford. And partially the reason for that was like one, my sister goes there. Two, it's really close to home and I'm a homebody, like couch potato for sure. And then three is that I think it suited because I have a wide variety of interests, so I wanted to be able to explore a little bit, and Stanford seemed like a good place to do that. So I applied restrictive early action there, um, and it was one of the only schools I applied to, and luckily I got in, and that was basically my entire college journey.
Right. So just to give a bit more context, for those of you watching, there's in the college application, you can apply early decision to some schools, which is a binding agreement that you must attend. You should only do it if a school is your dream school. There's also an option called early action, which is mostly for a few public schools on the common application, where you will get your decision a bit earlier, but the deadline to submit it is a bit earlier too. There's also another option called restrictive early action, like Kyle did for Stanford, which is usually a few Ivy schools and some private schools. The reason they make it a restrictive early action is so that you can't apply to other restrictive early actions or early decisions at the same time. This is so that there's not like you can't apply to like Princeton, Harvard, or like Yale at the same time early, and would probably have to do it regular. Now, for my earlies, I am a guy going into CS, and I was told that it's an advisable idea to cast a wide net, have a lot of options. For public schools, I applied to Georgia Tech, Purdue, and USC early action. And for restrictive early action, I actually think I made a bit of a mistake by applying to Caltech restrictive early action. I did it because I saw that nobody else, except for one person in my school, was applying to there. And in hindsight, although like I was interested in Caltech, I maybe could have like applied to something else that I was more interested in. Like I was more interested in Stanford and MIT, and I think maybe I could have used my early slot on one of those instead. Yeah.
So for me, I didn't early decision anywhere because I don't really like being committed to something. Like I basically applied to my school's regular decision. And to be honest, the only requirement I had when it came to checking for schools was basically like my state school, which is ASU or Northeast school. So I didn't apply anywhere else on the West Coast. Sorry, Kyle, Tyler. I know you guys are big West Coast fans. But basically, when I was looking for the schools after I got my acceptances, a big thing was I really liked the open curriculum at Brown. So it was as close to as much of a dream school as I wanted. And I'm someone who changes her mind a lot. I don't know if you could tell when I was talking about my activities, I was kind of doing stuff all over the place. So basically, I was looking for a school that allowed me to do, like political science, like economics, things like philosophy, writing, etc. So for me, although I didn't really have a dream school in mind, I just had a general region and idea of a program. I think once I started looking at my places, I was able to narrow it down. So I would say don't just choose it based off of a preconceived notion. I would say like really do some research, because otherwise, if you're not passionate about the school, I think it ends up showing in your application.
Yeah, so I guess my next question is kind of similar, or can kind of link to some of your guys' answers. So I guess in general, I wanted to ask about whether you guys have thoughts or reflections about the admissions process. And do you think people have really big misconceptions about the admissions process? Like, for example, Shruti, I know you were just talking about how you did lots of scattered things, but I know lots of people, like, they always tell you to like focus on one thing. So maybe like, are there things that people think about the college application process that, having gone through it, you don't think are actually really that true?
Yes, I guess I'll start. I think one big misconception is I remember like for years, people would tell me, or just like kids generally who had older siblings would say, you needed to find a spike. Like you needed to do like one thing that you were good at, or like one theme or something. And I think in my early years, freshman and sophomore year, because I had so many different interests, I didn't really allow myself to do anything out of my spike. So I would just focus on like speech and debate or like my nonprofit for political advocacy. But then I just felt like that was really silly and I wasn't really able to do what I enjoyed. And I think what really matters on a college application is you're genuinely looking for passionate students who are very involved in what they do and have a clear reason and a motivation for doing so. So even though there were things that didn't really like match with my spike of, let's say, like political advocacy, right? Like research, I was able to clearly explain why I did the research and how it connected to my own background. Or for example, like things that I did with like piano or even like random economic competitions I did, even though that might seem like not unified with my theme, I was able to explain it well enough, I think, and I was able to like, I don't know, just tie it into like my identity rather than like some made up spike. So I think that was one big misconception that I had going into the process.
Go ahead, Kyle.
No, Ariel, you go. Go.
Okay. I completely agree with Shruti. I think that like the idea of a spike really is not that true. If you do have a passion, go ahead and follow it, but don't force yourself to only be defined by that, because I know that some clubs that I started, freshman, sophomore year that I thought that I needed to be in, I quit them by junior year and I was fine. And I'd say something else to be aware of, I guess, when you're actually applying is that, starting early on your essays is great, but things will change. I know I was editing everything up until like the week of. I really don't recommend like, procrastinating or anything, but like for all the students that are applying, like you will change your mind about that and that's okay. Don't force yourself to just stick with a draft you did a month ago if you feel that that is not true to you now. Um, and I think also, like, just in terms of majors and things, I was a little bit confused because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet. And, I thought, oh, computer science is going to be such a competitive major. But it actually ended up working out well for me, and I think that's because it made sense. So don't pick a major just because you think it will be easier to get in, because you won't. Um, Pick a major that aligns with your interests and aligns with your future goals, because then you can actually write about it and it makes sense. Because if you pick something random, it's not going to fit with your application and it will drag it down.
All right. I totally agree with what Shruti and Ariel have said. Um, these like the idea of a spike, I feel like just it's not too bad of an idea, but if the message is you have to focus on this one thing and this one thing only, I think that's where it goes wrong. You should, aside from like specializing to an extent in one subject, you should also, as a freshman or sophomore, be like open to learning many new things, such as trying out maybe a sport or a new club like speech and debate, and something else. These clubs can offer a lot of personal growth that you probably wouldn't have gotten if you never tried them in the first place. Anything else to add, Kyle?
No, I was gonna say it's very similar to stuff to what all three of you said, so I'm gonna pass on this one.
Okay, then maybe we can have Kyle take the first stab at the next question. I think you guys talk a lot about how you guys have lots of hobbies, especially like you guys like to scatter and just explore your interests a lot. How do you balance your time with all of those hobbies and especially make time for things like school or just family and friends?
Yeah, I'm glad I have this question because one of my proudest things of like my entire high school experience was how good I was at work-life balance. And while that sometimes meant that I just like watched YouTube the entire day, like when I got home from school, it also meant that I was able to choose my extracurriculars like that I actually enjoyed so that they were basically hobbies. So some of those things included creative writing, which is both relaxing and like something that was pretty competitive, or that made me a pretty competitive applicant. Filmmaking, I love watching movies, and I also made a documentary about my piano teacher. Oh, there's a whiteboard. Um, let's see, and music as well. So playing piano, and I also like to compose music and improvise. So I composed the music for my documentary. And so all of those things were like, I guess, extracurriculars and work, but they were also really fun. And so I was able to de-stress a lot by doing those things. Additionally, I felt like my school workload wasn't too much, so that left me with a lot of time for other things. I also just happened to be a pretty efficient person, I guess, and so I was able to get a lot of those things done. But lastly, and I think this was a really important thing for me, is that when I took a break, I didn't treat it as if like I'm wasting time, but I thought of my breaks as just important as my work. So I felt like I was being productive while I was like, just sitting around for a little bit because I knew I needed that rest in order to like, go faster on the next activity.
I can go next. I really agree with what Kyle was saying at the end. I'm just like briefly share a story. In freshman year, I like did not allow myself to take any breaks because for one, I was taking 4 APs in freshman year. I don't know why I was doing that. Two, I was just starting speech and debate and I was practicing like 2 or 3 hours a day. And I was also doing a lot of different activities that frankly I didn't really need to do. Like Ariel said, I think last time she joined a bunch of clubs and left in junior year. That's basically what I did. I just joined a bunch of stuff and I think I overworked myself. So I ended up getting really burnt out. And that really forced me to find out like what I actually enjoyed doing and what I was actually passionate about. So I chose a different speech and debate event that aligned more with politics and more about news, which I'm really passionate about. I do stuff like a lot within my own community. So I work with their local library and I'm a huge reader. I love meeting people and talking to people. So in a way, a lot of the advocacy and activism that I ended up doing in high school was also an excuse just to like talk with a lot of my friends, meet new people and make connections. So although I would say like pretty busy, I would, especially in my junior and first semester of senior year, I was also doing a lot of things where I felt fulfilled and actually like, I felt happy about the impact I was making. And as for like school work-life balance, because our school is pretty academically rigorous and we have a lot of AP classes and like exams to take every year, like I think in my junior year I took like 7 or 8 APs. I had to be really strict with making sure that I wasn't spending like too much time on one thing. So I would have a schedule basically where I would study until like 6 or 7 p.m., allow myself to work on extracurriculars. And if need be, I would like spend the night working on like school stuff. So sometimes I would pull all-nighters, which isn't really good for your health, but that was just really like extreme situations. But for the most part, because I had a schedule and I ended up forming like a habit of splitting my time, I was able to enjoy my weekends with my friends. I was able to do hobbies like I love watching movies, just like Kyle. I like exploring art and literature, things like that. So nothing like too intense, but just allowing myself to have some free time.
All right. So some of my hobbies, one of my hobbies on the side is playing the cello. And to be honest, sometimes the time management didn't exactly work out. Like I would not definitely I did not practice every day. And it'd be rare to have a week where I practiced every day. Might have been every other day most of the time. And in regards to the topic of time management, what I found best for me was setting a timer and just focusing during the full duration of the timer and then taking breaks after. This is because like once I focused, I got into this zone where just I was in a routine of getting into the work instead of switching tasks from one spot to another. By the way, one of the worst things you can do is switch tasks a lot. like you're typing your essay, you switch to check a message on your phone. That I think is a big red flag. So I'd encourage you to not switch tasks when doing work. Some of my friends have also said that listening to music while working helps. Um, I'm I personally haven't exactly tried that out way too much yet, but I think if you want to try it out, it's worth trying out. Time management, you want to also be writing down all of your tasks and make sure they're all checked off the list before tomorrow. That is a few tips that I can give on that topic.
In order to make time for everything that I do now, I did have to give up on volleyball, which was something that I was very involved with. Like I had gone to nationals and everything, and it was something that I enjoyed. I had a great team, but in the grand scheme of things, I just did not have time to do it. And it was difficult for me to give it up, but now I'm planning to get back into it in college, and uh, it's like sometimes you do have to give up certain things to make room for others, but I don't regret it, and I'm happy that I can get back into it.
Yeah, as someone who is also quitting volleyball this coming year to make room for stuff, I think definitely understand that. Um, I think one of the things you guys just, oh yeah, also, I think because we're starting to run a little low on time, so maybe we want to slightly speed up the rate of answering a little bit. Um, as someone, or I guess you guys obviously are involved in a lot, and even with time management, it's still kind of a pinch to get all of your interests into one kind of day. How has that affected your relationship with your parents? How has your relationship with your parents changed? And I guess what would you do differently about your relationship with your parents and your family overall?
I can go first. Yeah, I love my parents. Mom, if you're watching, I love you. I'm like super fortunate to have really supportive parents who work together with me as a team. I feel like a lot of the times I see kids fighting with their parents, but I'm like, that confuses me because they're both working towards the same goal, like should be, together. So I feel like I've always had a good relationship with my parents, and it's only gotten better as time has went on because I've grown up. I've realized how hard the job of parenting can be, and I know that they just want the best for me.
For me, yeah, I never really had any conflicts with my parents, especially not on academics. My parents are very hands-off. They know that I take care of my work, and I don't even think they've ever asked to see my report card. But yeah, like I think they had a lot of trust in me, which I appreciated, and that helped me, have more time to just do other things instead of worrying about like what are my parents going to think because we were all just on the same page. And I think that the biggest change is probably the amount of time they had to put in to helping me get to places. Like commute was definitely a big thing, especially when I couldn't drive. And I really appreciate my parents for taking their time in order to make sure I was getting to places on time and then, traveling with me, especially when I had like fellowships that were across the country. So I definitely appreciate them for that.
I pretty much agree with both Kyle and Ariel. So for sake of time, yeah, I'll pass as well.
All right. Same for me. Except my parents would really not like it if I was like watching YouTube or playing video games. And there was some disagreement over that issue. Now that I'm an adult, I think things are different and now we can like they don't care as much, but yeah, there was a bit of contention over like me playing video games.
I guess another thing I wanted to ask about then is I know Kyle and Tyler now have mentioned YouTube. And I think one of the big parts of kind of being a teenager now is social media. And so lots of people have things like YouTube or Instagram. How has social media kind of affected your guys' lives? And what are some tips for kind of handling that?
Personally, I would just put like time limits on like YouTube or Instagram, for example, because I do like spending free time on those two apps, and sometimes I spend too much. So when I know I have like a test coming up or an activity, I would just force myself to not do it.
Yeah, generally for me, social media has been pretty positive. I got it in ninth grade because I was going to ISEF, the International Science and Engineering Fair, and I wanted to follow everyone on Instagram. And so it's really good with keeping in touch with people who don't live close to you. So Shruti and Ariel, Instagram is like one of my ways of staying connected. But at the same time, I did become a little obsessed with like the numbers, which is really strange. I got so excited when I got to 100 followers. It was so it can become a little toxic. So something like time limits is helpful. And just your gut tells you that it's bad. So you just have to stop the doom scroll at some point.
Yeah. I think my mom like set up my Instagram account with me when I was in like sixth grade or something because that was all the rage. That was what was popular. And I think that starting it at a younger age, strangely, made it less important to me. So I just did not care about it as much once I got into high school. Of course, I would go through periods like during the school year where I would just like cut myself off or just delete everything. And then like when I was free again, I just re-download it if I wanted to. So I think that, I guess working with your family to keep yourself accountable helps, and just being self-aware too.
So I actually didn't download Instagram until like 1 month ago. Um, I was mostly on Discord, and yeah, um, it's just a chatting platform for like many friends. But one thing that I want to say is social media doesn't replace in-person interaction. Like even this Zoom meeting doesn't replace what could be like an in-person meeting. But so try to hang out in person, get the in-person experiences too. And social media is just a bonus, right?
Yeah, so I know Ariel, you mentioned how like you kind of your journey with social media has kind of shifted since you got from middle school to high school. So maybe you can take the first shot at answering this one. I guess, what kind of person were you in middle school and how has that kind of changed as you've gone through high school? And have you become more mature and more responsible? This one is especially for the parents who have crazy middle schoolers who they aren't sure will ever become mature adults like them.
Yeah, so I actually have two younger brothers, and there's a bit of an age gap, and I think that, going from middle to high school, I kind of realized my role being an older sibling, and I'm setting an example for what they will do. So that really pushed me to, I guess, achieve more because I wanted to be someone that my siblings would be proud of. And I think that, also being the oldest child, I felt like I had to make my parents proud, even though like they didn't have any expectations for me. It was just like some intrinsic motivation. And I think that, as you mature and as you grow older, and also as you see people around you change and your circle of friends maybe become tighter, you kind of see what you want for your future. And I really think that if you're able to articulate your goals in the future, that's when you can start to take the steps towards becoming the person you want to be. And it doesn't have to be anything specific, but just understanding, okay, I want to go to college and I want to, maybe have this possible job in the future. Even just having a simple goal like that will make you reconsider things like, oh, should I go to this party like this weekend? Or should I like focus more on this test? Because, there's always opportunities to go and hang out with people in the future. But there are some things that have deadlines and you have to prioritize them. So I think that with time that helps, and also understanding your role with the people around you that also will push you as well.
Yeah, I guess my little insert here is that I don't think I was really like conscious until at least 11th grade. And I bet in college, I will think like right now, me speaking is also not conscious, but it's really crazy how much you develop each year, like the accumulation of new knowledge and also just being aware of how the world works, like how time passes. I think only recently have I been aware of like how long a month really feels. And it's like these very like kind of, I guess, seemingly unimportant but basic things that I started to realize only pretty late in high school. But I think each year I saw significant growth, um, which might be a universal experience, or I was just, you know, just a potato until a year ago.
Oh, sorry.
You can go. You can go.
Oh, okay. Mine's pretty short, but for me, I was very like introverted in middle school and like apart from like a very small circle of friends, I would basically just like read books all the time. And then when I went into high school, and I honestly think it was because speech and debate like forced me to actually like speak for once and like go to tournaments and meet people. I ended up becoming like really extroverted. Like I really love making new friends and meeting new people. And honestly, like I think like the person I was in middle school, like we share a lot of the same like core values and stuff, but I think I just became more comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah, similar to what a lot of people said, the knowledge that I got and started to develop, the things in the world I started to see, I from paying more attention to news, current events, and other stuff like that, really helped shape my worldview and make me a much more mature person, more understanding um, person than I was in middle school. All right.
Okay. Well, if that's everyone has to say on that one, that's the end of my questions that I have. So thank you for answering all of my questions. Now we're going to move on to sort of an audience Q&A. So also just a reminder, if anybody has questions, you can put them into the chat and we'll do our best to get them out into the webinar. So I'll just go through some of the questions that people have had in the chat just throughout the meeting. This first one is kind of towards Kyle, I think, more specifically. Someone was asking, because Cambridge is such a small school with very few extracurriculars and very few clubs, do you feel like you missed out on a lot of things at a small school like Cambridge? And how did you find opportunities outside that school?
Yeah, I'd say the only really big thing I missed out on was some of the quote unquote culture of high school. Cambridge is like completely vape free, weed free, all those like illicit substances and terrible things that high schoolers do. There's none of that at Cambridge. So I guess I missed out on that, which really isn't missing out on much. I guess also we don't have prom, but luckily I was able to go to another person's prom in senior year. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. But to be serious, um, I think a lot of people think that going to a small school like Cambridge makes it so that you're like missing out on the AP classes, which really isn't true. I was able to take, let's see, 10 or 11 APs just on the side, and really you don't have to do that much. But there's the option to just self-study for APs. And then, of course, that the AP classes are being replaced with like really thoughtfully curated, like good classes, which I enjoy a lot more than APs. So yeah, I really don't think I missed out on much. And I love my high school experience.
Yeah. Yes, I do like Cambridge. Those classes are very good. I guess the next question is kind of directed towards Ariel, I think, because you do debate pretty intensively and have done it pretty intensively in your high school career. And you did mention that you did it in middle school. So someone was asking, is there a super big jump from middle school to high school debate? And kind of what does that transition look like? And how long do you expect that transition to take?
There is a jump. First of all, there's a bigger time commitment. There's going to be a lot more high school tournaments that you have to go to, and the more tournaments you go to, the better you will be. Practice makes perfect. On top of that, in high school, you will be competing with kids that are 18 while you are 14 as a freshman. So don't be discouraged if you're not as good as them. That's just how it works, and you'll get better with time. Again, practice. And also just traveling, that takes a lot of time as well. That's something you have to be prepared for. And Also, by the time you get to high school, I feel like you definitely have to put more effort into the kind of research that you're doing. Some things like, not having sources cited correctly, that's not going to fly anymore. You're going to have a variety of judges, and you don't want to be someone who gets called out and gets disqualified. So you have to really take effort in what you're doing. But I think that, if you do it your freshman year or whatever year of high school you're starting it in, I'd say maybe the first 2 to 3 tournaments are probably going to be a transition period, but after that, you'll do fine. I started out in regular like freshman debate my freshman year, like when I first started LD, and then by like the fourth tournament, I was in varsity. So it's possible. You just have to put in time and effort and ask for help. There's a lot of online resources too.
Yeah, someone who was thrown into the fire at Berkeley in my freshman year. It is a transition. Um, I guess this one, I don't know if it's necessarily directed towards any one person, because I think you guys all have done parts of this. But how did you build your own clubs and get people to join and find so many, I guess, find so many activities outside of school in terms of founding new kind of clubs and organizations?
For me, one thing that I did was I'll take speech and debate, for example. We really didn't have any like speech culture at our school. A lot of people only did public forum or Lincoln Douglas. So once I started doing tournaments and this other girl who ended up like leaving the school was also competing, we ended up posting our results a lot to the school newspaper and stuff. And people got really curious about, what we were doing, where we were traveling, like what events. And we would host like open house events, not just for students, but for parents. We wanted to make sure like everyone knew, because if you do speech and debate, you understand it's an entire family commitment. Your parents have to judge, you have to like take you to drive you to tournaments or come with you whenever you travel across the country. So we really focus on doing as many like information-based events and even showcases, offering opportunities for people to find out. For activities outside of school, I think speech and debate was actually really lucky for me because I met a lot of people who were doing things I was interested in, and I'd end up asking them for information. Other than that, I would just really look in my local community. I live in a pretty small town. We have only a few thousand people, compared to the rest of Arizona. So not a lot of young people live here. So what I would do is I would just go to like libraries or youth council or government and basically just like ask for opportunities. And I would end up just like, after asking enough times, I would get opportunities.
Yeah, I'd like to add on a bit. Like Shruti said, I was part of the math club, and although that was an already established club, the club overall was not really doing way too much. And to kind of like increase its profile and recruit more members, we participated in more competitions, such as local ones in San Diego. Sorry, like the CCA Math Bonanza and the Caltech Math Meet, where like we'd have volunteers to drive up to Caltech to do a math competition for the whole day.
Yeah, and so I think one of the next questions, again, is very broad question, but lots of people are asking kind of what you guys do with your summers. And specifically, I think someone asked about the rising senior summer year, which I know is a very big summer year and also can be kind of a busy one with college application season coming up and you have to cram in all of these programs. So what did you guys do and how do you think that helped your application and just you as a person?
For me, I interned. I think that's a good opportunity because you get to make money, you get real world experience, and you're keeping yourself busy and meeting other people. I actually did not start my essays until I think late September, and I think that's good because so many things changed the start of my senior year that if I had written it before then, like I would have to change the essay anyways because I got new awards, I got new extracurricular positions, I got new experiences that I wanted to talk about. So don't worry if you're not starting like super early at the end of junior year. I think that it's actually better to start a little later, but don't procrastinate too much.
For me, I feel like if I got more of the stuff done midsummer, that would have been nice. You're right that like I would have had to like edit my essays later on, such as getting like a team captain position for my running essay. But I think just getting the essay out of the way, the big and heavy essays like the UC personal insight questions and the Common App essay, those two done over the summer for me was really helpful.
I don't know if Kyle or Shruti wanted to add on to any of that. I know you guys both do a lot over your summers, especially Kyle.
Yeah, rising senior summer, I was out of the house for 3 weeks because I was at Kenyon for a writing camp. It's in the middle of nowhere, but it was a great experience. And then I went to the Coolidge Senators Summit where I met Ariel. So obviously it was worth it because I met her and many other cool people. In terms of the college essay side, I did try to start in June, but I got pretty continuous writer's block because I didn't know how to keep editing my essays. But ideally, you want to have like many different versions of your college essays by the time you're in October and doing your first applications because you just cannot write the best essay on the first try. It has to constantly go through revision.
Yeah, I'll answer those two questions as well. For one, apart from doing national speech and debate tournament every summer, I didn't really do any like programs. I mostly did, like Ariel said, internships. So in my senior or rising senior summer, I started my internship with the ACLU, which was actually pretty involved. We would just go around Arizona doing a lot of different events. And even though that wasn't really like an established program, it was something pretty niche and there wasn't really any other high schooler in Arizona doing that. So I think that helped me stand out. Apart from that, in terms of summer programs, I really only did them in my junior summer year and I ended up getting full scholarships for it. So I did take this thing called the Economics for Leaders program and then this local thing at my state called Cesar Chavez Leadership Institute. And for me, I think that was just helpful in forming connections. As for the essay part, I actually did not start writing my essays until September, October, and I really didn't submit the essays I did for my regular schools up until like the week it was due because I'm someone who just works till the last minute. That works for me. I don't think that works for a lot of other people, but I got a lot of ideas like close to the deadline, or I think of things in a different way. So I used up all the time I had basically.
Okay, yeah. I think it's 6, but if everybody can just stay, I think we have like 2 more quick questions. I think the first question is kind of related to the whole essay writing process. I know people get writer's block all the time and they procrastinate. And so how would you guys say, what helped you guys improve your writing on your college essays?
YouTube. There are so many YouTube videos and that really help with writing a good Common App essay. They tell you to like give you tools to really reflect upon yourself and the good structure that comes with a good essay. Kyle, also your friend Patricio, recommended me a book called How to Write Your Way In, and that helped a lot too. So to summarize, examples of past essays, such as like on YouTube and books about essays, can really help.
Yeah, I love Patricio. I haven't talked to him in a long while though. Um, I think definitely get other people to read your essays. Like I employed my sister and my mom. They were working full time to read my essays. Not really, but you really need that other because once you've spent like so many hours looking at the same essay, you really like can't get the big picture that other people can. And so that's really helpful. And then of obviously like if you can get like into a pattern of having them look like every 2 weeks or so and just keep on working on it. Um, that's how I think you get a good essay.
Okay. And then just one more question. I think this one is kind of specific to Kyle because as we mentioned earlier, he's the only one who really had a dream school going in. But did you really plan in order to get into your dream school, or was it very much just kind of free, and by the time you got there, you kind of had something that you thought would be able to get you in?
I guess I had Stanford in the back of my mind because Emily was going there. Emily's my sister, but I really didn't plan to go there necessarily. Um, I like my freshman self would not think like if I imagined my senior self back then, it would not be like me right now, because I really took quite a detour in junior year. I moved more away from science research and STEM things, and I really got into liberal arts like writing and filmmaking. Um, and of course, like as we've said earlier in this webinar, this whole idea of needing a spike isn't necessarily true because if the college admissions readers can tell whether this is like something artificial that you've done just to get into college versus something that you're really passionate about. So on one hand, I guess I did have this idea of Stanford, but on the other hand, I was just following like the stuff that I wanted to do, and it ended up pretty good. So I think having a balance between those two, a golden mean, as always, is good.
Okay. I think since we're past time, we should probably end it there, just out of respect for everybody's time. Thank you for answering all of our questions. Just a quick conclusion, just to summarize what this webinar is and kind of what We Impact is, just for people who came late. We Impact is a nonprofit organization that tries to empower students through educational events, club activities, and civic engagement to make positive impacts on the community. And if you have more questions, you would like to reach out, please feel free to leave a message at the weimpactcommunity.com website. With that, I think everybody's free to leave, including the seniors who have stayed for an hour. Thank you for answering all of our questions, and good night, everybody.